My name is Scarlett Hughes. I'm 29 years old, and 6 months ago, I thought my career at Whitmore and Associates was everything I'd ever wanted. The prestigious law firm had been my dream workplace since law school. With its mahogany-paneled offices and century-old reputation for handling the city's most influential clients. I'd worked 80-hour weeks for 3 years, building cases that saved the firm millions and earned clients unwavering loyalty. But apparently, my dedication meant nothing when the partners decided I was too progressive for their traditional image. What they didn't know was that my late grandmother had left me something that would make their conservative attitudes irrelevant, and their betrayal would cost them everything they'd built. The trouble started subtly, as workplace discrimination often does. During Monday morning meetings, senior partner Richard Whitmore III would cut me off mid-sentence, dismissing my legal strategies as unnecessarily aggressive or not our firm's style. When I proposed innovative approaches to corporate law that could save clients significant money, the other partners would exchange knowing glances and table the discussion indefinitely. My colleague James Morrison, who'd started the same week as me, but came from a connected family, began receiving the high-profile assignments I'd previously handled. The message was clear. Despite my proven track record and the respect I'd earned from clients, I was being systematically pushed aside because my forward-thinking approach didn't align with their old-school methodology. The partners' treatment grew increasingly blatant over the following months. They relocated my office from the prestigious 10th floor to a cramped space near the copy machines, claiming budget constraints while simultaneously renovating James's corner office. Client meetings I'd scheduled were mysteriously reassigned to other attorneys without explanation. When Mrs. Catherine Blackwood, the firm's most valuable client, specifically requested my counsel on a complex merger, Whitmore told her I was unavailable and assigned the case to his nephew, David Whitmore Jr., fresh out of law school. I watched from the sidelines as David fumbled through depositions I could have handled flawlessly, knowing that my exclusion was purely political. The final insult came when they denied my request for partnership track consideration, citing my inability to maintain client relationships, despite having the highest client satisfaction ratings in the firm. What made their behavior particularly galling was how they justified it during informal conversations. James would casually mention that the firm needed lawyers who understood tradition and stability, implying that my advocacy for gender equality and progressive legal precedents made me a liability. During the annual Christmas party, I overheard Richard telling another partner that young lawyers today lack proper respect for established ways of doing business. His eyes pointedly fixed on me across the room. They seemed convinced that I had nowhere else to go, that my career depended entirely on their approval. The assumption was that a 29-year-old associate from a middle-class background couldn't possibly have alternatives to their prestigious firm. They treated me like I should be grateful for any opportunity they provided, no matter how diminished or humiliating it became. The breaking point arrived on a cold February morning when Richard called me into his office for what he termed a career development discussion. He sat behind his imposing desk, fingers steepled, and delivered what amounted to an ultimatum disguised as mentorship. "Scarlett, you're undoubtedly talented, but your approach concerns several of our long-standing clients," he began, his tone condescendingly paternal. "Perhaps you'd be better suited to a firm that specializes in more contemporary legal philosophy. We've decided to restructure your position into a part-time consulting role, which should give you time to explore other opportunities." The offer included a 60% salary reduction and elimination of all benefits, essentially forcing my resignation. He clearly expected me to accept graciously, perhaps even thank him for his generosity in not firing me outright. That night, I sat in my apartment reviewing the documents my grandmother's attorney had given me 6 months earlier. papers I barely glanced at while grieving her loss. Eleanor Hughes had been a quiet woman who lived modestly in the same house for 60 years, never mentioning the substantial real estate investments she'd made throughout her life. The portfolio was staggering. Commercial properties downtown, residential developments in 3 states, and most significantly, the building that housed Whitmore and Associates offices. She purchased it in the 1980s as part of a larger investment strategy, becoming their landlord without their knowledge. The rental income alone exceeded my annual salary at the firm, but more importantly, the lease agreements gave me considerable leverage over their operations. My grandmother had also established a private practice license under Hughes Legal Enterprises. Complete with established business accounts and professional insurance, everything I needed to launch my own firm immediately. The next morning, I walked into Richard's office with a resignation letter and a counteroffer that left him speechless. "I accept your assessment that we're not a good fit," I said, placing the document on his desk. "However, I should mention that I'll be establishing my own practice in the building next door. I've already secured office space and will be specializing in the exact type of contemporary legal philosophy you find so concerning." His confident smirk faltered as I continued. "I wanted to give you professional courtesy notice that several clients have expressed interest in following me. Mrs. Blackwood, in particular, was quite unhappy about being reassigned to David after specifically requesting my services." I maintained perfect composure as Richard's face shifted from confusion to dawning alarm, realizing that his dismissive treatment had just created his firm's newest competitor. Within 2 weeks, I'd established Hughes Legal Enterprises in a beautifully appointed suite, just 3 blocks from Whitmore and Associates. The irony wasn't lost on me that my new office overlooked their building, the building I now owned, but they still didn't know about. My first call was to Mrs. Blackwood, who immediately transferred her substantial account to my firm, citing her frustration with David's inexperience and Richard's dismissive attitude toward her concerns. She also referred 3 other wealthy clients who'd grown tired of Whitmore's outdated approach to modern business challenges. Within a month, I'd secured enough clients to hire 2 associates and a paralegal, all of them eager to work for a firm that valued innovation over tradition. The business grew so rapidly that I had to lease additional office space while monitoring Whitmore's increasingly desperate attempts to retain their remaining clients. The most satisfying moment came 4 months later during the annual Legal Excellence Awards ceremony, where both firms were nominated in different categories. I arrived in a stunning black evening gown, confident and successful in ways Richard had never imagined possible. When my name was announced as winner of the Innovative Legal Practice Award, I could see the shock on the Whitmore team's faces as they realized the full scope of what they'd lost. During my acceptance speech, I thanked those who underestimated the power of progressive thinking and inadvertently motivated me to prove them wrong. The room erupted in applause as other attorneys approached afterward, praising my firm's fresh approach and asking about partnership opportunities. Richard sat rigid in his chair, watching his former associate receive the recognition he'd spent decades pursuing. The final revelation came 2 months later when Whitmore and Associates received their lease renewal notice, finally learning their landlord's identity. Richard called my office, his voice strained as he requested a meeting to discuss mutual business interests. When he arrived, his usual arrogance had been replaced by barely contained desperation. Their rent was set to increase substantially, reflecting current market rates they'd been sheltered from for years. "Perhaps we can work out some arrangement," he suggested, his tone now respectful in ways it had never been when I worked for him. I leaned back in my executive chair, savoring the complete reversal of our positions. "I'm afraid the lease terms are non-negotiable," I replied coolly, but I'd be happy to discuss acquiring some of your remaining clients if you're interested in downsizing your operation to match your reduced revenue. Today, Hughes Legal Enterprises employs 15 attorneys and has become the city's fastest-growing law firm, specializing in exactly the type of progressive legal strategies Whitmore had rejected. 3 of their former partners have joined my team, bringing their expertise and client relationships with them. Richard's firm has downsized to half its former size, struggling to compete with our innovative approach and competitive pricing. James Morrison, who'd benefited from their favoritism, now works at a small suburban practice after being passed over for partnership when the firm's financial troubles became apparent. Mrs. Blackwood recently mentioned that she'd never been happier with legal representation, praising our firm's ability to anticipate and address modern business challenges that traditional firms couldn't handle effectively. The sweet irony is that their conservative approach, which they'd used to justify excluding me, has become their greatest liability in a rapidly changing legal landscape. Clients want attorneys who understand modern business practices, technology law, and progressive workplace policies. Exactly the expertise I'd tried to bring to their firm. My radical ideas have proven to be market advantages, attracting companies that need forward-thinking legal counsel. When potential clients research local firms online, they find Hughes Legal Enterprises praised for innovation and client satisfaction, while Whitmore and Associates struggles with outdated practices and declining reviews. Their attempt to silence my voice only amplified it, creating the perfect conditions for their most talented associate to become their most successful competitor. Sometimes I drive past their building, my building, and remember the condescending way Richard dismissed my potential. He'd been so certain that his established reputation and traditional methods were unshakable, never considering that change was inevitable and that excluding progressive voices would leave them unprepared for evolution. The same qualities they'd criticized as too radical became the foundation of a thriving practice that surpassed their achievements in less than a year. Their betrayal taught me valuable lessons about recognizing my own worth and the importance of surrounding myself with people who value innovation over tradition. Most importantly, I learned that when others underestimate your potential, they often create the perfect opportunity for you to prove them spectacularly wrong.